Hey, what's up, folks? Lil Guillotine here, and I'm here to help you solve one of society's most pressing dilemmas. What if there was an uprising, a revolutionary anti-capitalist uprising? For instance, after the November 3rd election, who knows what's gonna happen? It might be time, you know what I'm saying? Where then would we get all the guillotines that we need, right? I'm coming to you today to solve this most unique and revolutionary problem for you. We're gonna design and then build a little guillotine with y'all. Without further ado, let's get into the design process. Now, I know that the symbol of the guillotine can be controversial to folks, especially the neoliberals and liberals. But I stand that it's a strong and powerful symbol of revolution by any means necessary, which I think may be relevant here in this country in the coming years, or maybe weeks. I'm working on a video about the symbol of the guillotine and whether or not it should be a symbol of the revolution and the radical left in general, or should we boot the symbol because it means too many authoritarian, oppressive, and violent things. So keep your eye out for that video. Should be dropping soon. Doing a lot of research about that because I want to make sure it's a thorough argument with the points all thought out. When it comes to designing and building guillotines, it's like they say, you don't reinvent the wheel, right? So what we're gonna do is look at some old guillotines, some already built guillotines, and steal that design and use it to make our own, as far as the ratios of height to width and the shape of the guillotine, etc. The guillotine I'm building today will not be functional. There will be no blade in it, and it will not be able to move at all, but it'll look exactly the same. And of course, the same kind of designing could be used to build a functional one too, should you be so inclined to do that. Hopefully we'll need that soon. So I'll show you how I sort of designed it using the computer and the internet. Search for the guillotine here, and then what you do is just find a picture of an existing guillotine, right? We're not going to reinvent the wheel, and we're going to download that picture. We'll open up our graphic design software. In this case, I'm using Gravit Designer, which I like. Okay, so then we're going to resize this image so it's workable. We got a picture of a guillotine, like a real guillotine, an existing one. Look for one that had a picture straight forward from the front, so that the dimensions, at least the ratios of dimensions, are still held, as opposed to one that they took a picture of the guillotine at an angle, or up or down, or left or right, or any combination thereof, where the ratios would not be as reliable. So what I did here is just cropped the image of the guillotine to see how many pixels high the guillotine was. And you see over here in the image size section that it's 144 pixels wide, 534 pixels high. And then quickly we can go and tell how many pixels high that the head hole is, which is 144. And then subsequently we can go and check out the height of the legs that come off the bottom. You see those are at 119 pixels. And so that'll be enough to give us our ratios of how high to the width that you need to make it the right size, to maintain the ratio of the original one that you're designing it off of. Okay, and then we're gonna go quickly look up like a picture and see how exactly it's built, and then we're gonna go ahead and design the thing. We'll draw a picture of it as a schematic so that we can sort of define the variables that we'll need to find in order to maintain the ratio, right? So here we go, reconstructing the guillotine in picture form here, and then we're gonna do some design, and I'll take you through the design process. So we're gonna make sure that when we're making our drawing, we take note of what we saw in the picture that showed the design of the existing guillotines, and we reproduce that here. We're gonna draw it from the view of the frontal plane, and then we'll draw a side view, and that way we can define every single piece of material that we need to build the guillotine, to reconstruct the design of the guillotine. And then we'll do some math and figure out exactly how big each piece should be, how long each piece should be. We'll end up with a bunch of variables of the different pieces of the guillotine build, and then we will base our calculations on the ratio of the existing guillotine that we got from the graphic design software and the image of a real guillotine. And then we will also plug in our design value, right? So in this case, I want this guillotine to be 3.5 feet tall. That's what works best for my costume. And so going to be using a height of 3.5 feet. And then the ratios that we got off the graphic design software of the existing guillotine to find out what each piece of wood should be. Actually, in this case, I'm going to be using PVC lumber. Using the data that we got from the graphic design software, the existing guillotine, we'll find out the height to width ratio, and we'll go ahead and find the height of the head hole relative to the total height of the guillotine. Another factor we'll need to know is the height of the support legs relative to the total height. That will help us define A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, which we'll solve for in terms of B, which is our design height. And using these three ratios will help us to define these variables as well. A is the width, which is going to equal the height times the height to width ratio, which gives us 0.27b. C is the leg height ratio times total height. D is the head hole ratio times the total height. And so now let's find G, which will be a little bit trickier because it's using some angles. We'll have to pull out some trigonometry in this case. So let's make an exploded view of G, one of the legs here. So we're going to define it as a right triangle using G as the hypotenuse and C as the equal sides, using our definition of cosine. We know this is a 45-degree triangle. It has three angles, 45 degree, and 90 degrees. And so if we take cosine 45, which is adjacent over hypotenuse, and so if we solve for G in that case, you see that we get 0.42b. Okay, so finding E a little more simpler. Let's look at the exploded view here. So in this case, we have to calculate in the width of our material. We'll call that variable H. And it's not really a variable, it's also another design value that you plug in depending on what kind of material you're going to be using. And then simply subtract 2 times H from the total width. And similarly for the top piece here, this is sort of like a traditional guillotine top design. I'm gonna go ahead and put a width of H, an overhang of H, exactly one material thick on each side, and I think that will look nice. And so in this case, we're going to be taking the width of our guillotine and then adding 2H, and you see that you get 0.27b plus 2H. Okay, so rewriting the variables. B is the design height, H is the board width. So we have all of our variables defined in terms of B and H now. So now all we have to do is plug in our values for B and H, the height we want and the width of the material. In my case, I'm using 3.5 feet height, and for the width of the material, it's 2.5 inches. So then let's just solve all the variables using those design values, and then you can easily figure out the dimension, the length of every piece of material that you need to build the guillotine. So yeah, A will be 1 foot, B will be 3.5 feet, C is 9 3/8 inches, D will be just about 1 foot, E is 7 inches, F will be 17 inches, and G is 17 13/16 of an inch. Okay, so now let's redraw our design here. Every piece, we got the blade. I'm gonna go ahead and define the height of this blade as about 2 times the width of the material. I think that'll look good, which will be 5 inches in this case. Plugging in all the values, we'll be able to define each piece of material and go ahead and make a materials list off of this schematic. There's these support pieces on the bottom. So yeah, this leg will be 17 and 13/16 inches. And so reading off of the drawing and using the lengths that we found with our trigonometry and algebra, we'll go ahead and see that we need 2 pieces of material, that's 3.5 feet, 4 pieces of material, 17 and 13/16 inches, 3 pieces of material that are 17 inches long, 2 pieces of material 1 foot long, and 3 pieces of material that's 7 foot long. And then of course we'll need to construct our blade and our string. I think I'll use like some jute twine for the string in this case, and I'm going to be cutting the blade out of a piece of PVC board that I have. I think will work nicely. The reason that I chose PVC as my material of choice is because I'm going to be wearing this as a stalk around costume on my shoulders, and so the lighter the material, the easier time I'll have carrying this around for Halloween fun and also for performances and whatnot. And also because I think that PVC bonds in a superior way when you glue it together compared to when you glue wood together. And so I'll be gluing and screwing this little guillotine together in order to create a very solid structure that will not break or come loose, and can be worn around and jostled around, no problem, right? We're gonna need versatile, heavily built, durable guillotines for the revolution. Am I right? Well, hey folks, thanks a lot for watching this design process of the guillotine. Don't know that there's many guillotine design videos out there, so I thought I'd bring one. Also allows me to utilize some of the skills I learned in mechanical engineering school for the good of the revolution, you know what I'm saying? So keep your eye out for that guillotine video. Is the guillotine a good symbol for the radical left? Keep your eye out for the guillotine costume. Gonna be making a video showing me assembling and constructing the little guillotine, so watch out for that video. Definitely like this video if you found it useful or at least amusing, and definitely subscribe because you don't want to miss these guillotine videos, you know what I'm saying? Alright folks, thanks for tuning in. I'm Lil Guillotine, and I'm wishing you happy guillotine building. Yeah, peace out y'all.